All right, everyone, greetings and salutations. My name is Chelsea Yarborough, and I serve as the Associate Director of Leadership Programming here at the Association of Theological Schools. And we are so excited to welcome you to this webinar, Empowering Theological Education Through Digital Transformation. We had the pleasure in October of gathering with the Technology and Theological Education Group, known as TTEG, and we had great and wonderful presentations. And one of the presentations that resonated across the group that we thought would be helpful to spread to the wider body is the one that we are sharing today. And so we are looking forward as we continue in a more digitized world, in a more tech-driven world, to thinking about what are the creative solutions and the resources and opportunities that are out there around digital transformation for our theological schools. And so we are so grateful that you would take, I call it a power hour, even if it dips over the hour a little bit, but that you would take time out of your day and your schedule to learn alongside us. And so, just as a shameless plug, we do have an annual conference that will be coming up later this year. And so, for our technology professionals, keep an eye out for that. And also, we thought for this one, not just to invite technology professionals, but our library staff, but our CFOs, because what we know is that decision making is usually a collective sport, right? It's usually more than one person that is bringing it to the table. And so, however you fit into the ecosystem of your institution, one, thank you for your leadership there. And also, you are welcome here. So, I'm so excited to introduce Ben Davies, who will serve as the leader of our webinar alongside some of his co-conspirators that are ATS professionals who have been a part of, I like to call us co-conspirators, right? Because we're all trying to build a better systems, more resources, et cetera, right? Who come from ATS schools. And so they'll be able to share firsthand their experiences and why this turn towards digital transformation in this way is helpful for them. So again, thank you all for coming. Please save your questions to the end. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A, and you'll be able to use the chat, the Q&A, to ask your questions. And if you need anything directly or having any trouble, feel free to DM me directly and I'll do my best to support you in that way. So welcome, Ben, and welcome, Laura, welcome, Jeremy, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Chelsea, for that really warm introduction. And again, to repeat, thank you so much for the introduction to so many wonderful people from the ATS team. And I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces on this call who I met back in October, as well as lots of new faces as well that I'm hoping to get to know as we dive into the world of well, basically transforming theological education through digital transformation. So no small task, but I'm hoping we'll cover a lot of ground today. And yeah, I'm just really appreciative of all of your time because getting dozens of people in one room is never easy. But yeah, looking forward to diving into this. And also delighted to introduce my co-conspirators, which I'm definitely going to refer to everyone I work with now as a co-conspirator. Delighted to be here with the fantastic Dr. Jeremy Wallace, who's the Assistant Director of Research and Public Services at Princeton Theological Seminary, and Laura Ladwig, who's the Director of Library Services at Puritan Reformed Theological Seminary. Jeremy, Laura, say hi very briefly before we dive in, and I'll introduce myself in a little bit more detail. Jeremy, you go for it.
Hello, it's very good to see you here today. We're excited to talk about digital resources.
Hello, all. It's great to be here.
Thanks, guys. And hello from me. I'm Ben. I'm a partnerships manager at Palego, and I have the pleasure of working with seminaries, Bible colleges, Christian universities around the world, and increasingly a lot in the US and Canada. And I spend a lot of time talking about digital transformation, about digital learning. And our platform, Palego, has been, I think, pretty close to that kind of frame of mind, that digital transformation piece for a number of seminaries. Also, we've, I think, had a lot of great results with ETS institutions who have been forward thinking, who are really putting the student experience first. And I think that's what we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today with Jeremy and with Laura. And before I dive in, I'd love to tell you a little bit more about us, about why we exist, and the problem that we're trying to solve with Palego. Some of you might have heard of us before, but I'm also conscious many of you might have never come across us or only have a fairly kind of cursory knowledge of what we do. So I'd love to just set the groundwork a bit before we dive in a little bit more detail into how schools have adopted Palego to enhance their digital learning experience. And yeah, in terms of kind of house rules and etiquette, I guess how this is going to run, there'll be a Q&A in the middle of this for Jeremy and for Laura, where I'll be asking them a lot of questions. I'm sure that you guys will have many questions that will arise the course of the next hour or so. So please drop them in the chat and we'll save some time at the end to go through as many of them as possible. And maybe while I'm getting up and running, feel free to drop a message in the chat just saying a little bit about yourself, where you're calling in from, and most importantly, because I'm hearing a lot of different answers, how's the weather where you are? Really interested to know and get to the bottom of what is going on with the weather. So yeah, looking forward to diving into that later on. But without further ado, who is Palego? What are we up to? We are a company based in London, as you can probably tell by my accent. We have been going for about 10 years now. And in simple terms, we're on a mission to make education accessible to all. And that's not just a slogan, it's actually running through everything we do on a daily basis. When we first started, our founder and his friends, they were students. They were like many of yourselves probably when you were studying, and many of your students at your institution, probably spending a lot of money on books. Books aren't getting any cheaper. You're probably familiar with the story. You had to buy a $200 textbook that you might read a couple of times, and then you've got a really expensive paperweight that's sitting on your desk, mocking you and laughing at you, that you can't do a lot with. You can't really resell it. In some cases, you'll have a well-stocked library, but maybe the books are out on loan, or they are the wrong edition, or whatever it might be. So what do? You have to spend your own money, or you just don't do the reading. So he thought, at the same time as going through this very familiar kind of story, he was using things like Spotify and Netflix, where you're able to get the world of entertainment at your fingertips. You don't own every single song on Spotify, but you can access it when you need it and when you want to listen to your favorite tunes. So he thought, why is there not the equivalent for academic books? So he decided to build one. So he met his best friend who knew how to code, and they whipped something up with a few publishers getting on board. Since then, we've grown pretty massively to a platform that has over 1 million titles live right now, all in one single easy to use platform that's got affordability, accessibility, and the digital experience for students at the core of what we do. So in terms of why we exist, hopefully that's clear. But I want to also just relate it very specifically to the theological space, and I think focusing on the US as well. Hopefully none of this data is really shocking, but we work with many research universities as well as Christian institutions and seminaries who are seeing students dropping out because of the cost of books and class materials. This data is showing that 25% of students are working extra hours to pay for books. 11% are skipping meals in order to afford books and course materials. And 65%, shockingly, skipping buying books entirely because they're too expensive. It's just not sustainable for them. So again, that's why Palego exists in the first place. And you'll see some of the statistics here showing the average cost that each student is paying per year. It's over $1,000 per student, when they're already so up against it with rising cost of living and cost of tuition, so many things to factor in. The rent isn't getting any cheaper as well. It's painting quite a difficult picture for students that's really rebounding on institutions as well. And when we focus on theological education, we're seeing some really interesting trends, but I don't believe theological education is immune to the wider pattern of that vicious cycle of the students struggling to access the resources. When it comes to wider trends, we've relied on some ATS data here. We're seeing that part-time degrees are on the rise. Distance learning, empowered by digital education, is a huge piece that takes up, yeah, as you can see here, a large portion of all theological education provision. International students studying digitally, also within the US and Canada as well. We're seeing a rise in let's call them shorter term, credentialized part-term courses with stackable credentials. We're seeing a rise in Masters of Theology programs and a drop, quite steep drop in MDiv enrollments. But running through this as well is that rising cost of full-time study and the average spend on library resources by full-time students. But I'm aware so many seminaries, you're seeing slightly non-traditional student profiles, people who are coming back to study after 20 years because of their calling, who don't fit the kind of standard undergrad profile, but their needs are quite acute when it comes to, yeah, not spending an arm and a leg on resources. So why am I telling you all this? Because we believe that Palego is the solution to resolving those problems when it comes to affordability, getting the resources to your students when they need them in a single platform. So the basic principle of Palego is over 1 million titles covering virtually every subject area under the sun, all in one single platform on an all-you-can-read basis. So think of it as a all-you-can-read buffet of titles. So the figure grows every single week. We add thousands of new titles. We have over 9,000 publishers we work with, including the leading theological publishers such as Zondervan, Crossway, Whitford, Baker, Erdmans, you name it, the list goes on. And we're just shy of 1,000 topics. I'm hoping we'll get those extra 8 pretty soon. If you've got any ideas what those might be, please let me know. But the basic principle is all the books for your course, plus all of the secondary reading and resources that you might not even know existed, all in one platform on an on-demand basis. And we're able to work directly with seminaries, and we'll hear more from Laura and Jeremy about how they've adopted Palego at their institution. But at the heart of what we do is the student experience. So basically, the model for us is unlimited access, where a college, a university, a seminary will be able to pay for access based on the number of students they want to provide the platform to. And think of it in this way, you'd be putting 1 million books in each student's pocket. And that's a pretty different model from other providers that are out there. And it really does mean that you can level the playing field. So your distance learners, your in-person students are all able to access that same collection regardless of where they are. There's a mobile app so they can take their learning with them on that long bus ride or a plane journey and carry on reading their text. And when it comes to working with seminaries, we'll dive into this in a little bit more detail, but we've put a lot of work in to integrate with your teaching and learning stack, your ecosystem, with integrations with Populi, Blackboard, Canvas, Brightspace, LMS tools, and library discovery layers to really just remove any friction, any barriers to getting the student into the book. Because as we've seen, there's already so many barriers there in between the student and that nice copy of the text they need for their course. We're trying to remove as much of that friction as possible. And also, we try to do it with a smile. We've got a really fantastic team who can support with that transformation piece, pushing implementation, and helping you get the most out of what it is that we can offer. And it's not just a sheer number of books. We actually put a lot of effort into making books more accessible, which is always front of mind. Students have many different needs, and the accessibility piece is never far from the agenda for academics and for libraries. So we've built things like read aloud capability, text-to-speech functionality, adjustable fonts, dyslexic fonts, and typefaces into the platform itself to cater to different styles of learning and reading and different reading capabilities. Not everyone is the same. A one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work. So you can tailor it to, well, your students can tailor it themselves based on their own preferences. We've also made it easier than ever to discover books. We want the discovery of knowledge and new books to be enjoyable, not something that's locked behind an algorithm you need to type in to even find the book for your course. And also citation and notation features to support things like referencing so that your students writing papers can have the best possible start in the platform itself. But as we say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So I'll very briefly stop sharing and jump into the platform so you can just get a little bit of a sneak peek of what Pelego looks like, just so we're all on the same page. But I won't spend 10 hours running through every single feature, don't worry. We're here to actually listen to Jeremy and Laura's experience, but just so we all get what Pelego looks like, hopefully you can all see my screen. This is what a Pelego account looks like when you're in the platform. So as you can see, it knows who I am because it's tied to my email address. So it's that single student kind of seat experience. But the beauty of that is your reading activity is tracked. All the different titles that I've opened are saved here. My book history, my reading lists, everything I need for my course is all in one place. And it's easy to find with a flowable, intuitive, quite minimal, but hopefully easy on the eyes layout. So as you scroll through, your students will discover books that they either have been assigned to read or that they just like the look of. They can click the book. No paywall, no need to wait for something that's out on loan to come back into the library collection. And with one click, again, they can go into the book and start reading. And it's just as simple as that. So again, all in one platform, over 1 million titles, easy to go, and we're in. But if you want to see more, we'll have a chat and we'll run through it in more detail later on. But today I'm going to jump out of the platform and spend a little bit of time maybe asking Jeremy and Laura a bit about their experience of Pelego working with us and adopting the platform for their students. Bear with me, I'm just going to share my screen again. So very briefly, I want to set the groundwork here because we've been working for quite a few years now with both Jeremy and Laura. I think a little bit over a year for Laura. But I'd be really eager to ask you guys, why your seminary decided to adopt Pelego. What was your frame of mind? What were some of the challenges you were facing that led you to work with us? Maybe we'll start with Jeremy and then move to Laura.
So our encounter with Prolego started after the pandemic. We have a large legacy print collection. We have scholars who tend to prefer print books in their hands. But during the pandemic, we were locked away from our own library. Our users couldn't get in. We eventually did curbside service, but that was limited to certain research groups. So I'll say that after that time, I really kind of changed the way I thought about building our collection. No longer was it about the things that we had, but I started thinking about how can we provide greater access to our researchers. So that's when I started looking into things like EBA or things like Peerlego. Peerlego, the breadth of 1 million ebooks, academic ebooks, was really impressive. I really like the idea that it wasn't just in our core subject area, but that there were ebooks that were in other subject areas, related subject areas. So I was providing them greater access that way. But also that there are many publishers represented there that I couldn't get ebooks from in any other way. So it was really a great way to expand access to different types of theological publishers. I'll also say I was impressed by the fact that most of our license agreements restrict who can have access. So it can be for students or faculty, on-site guests. But something like Perlego, we can give our licenses to whoever we want to. That's becoming more attractive as we get into things like learners or people who are here for a short time. We have visiting scholars or continuing education programs. So to be able to provide access to resources through licenses.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Jeremy. Now, Laura, I'm going to ask you the same question. Why did you decide to adopt Pelego? What was your kind of frame of mind? We coming at something similar perspective from Jeremy. We started working more recently with you than with Princeton. But yeah, tell us a little bit more.
Thanks, Ben. So we have both local and distance students, and we also have a range of degree programs from the MDiv all the way up to the doctorate, PhD level. So when we first looked at Perlego and we saw all the range of publishers, Jeremy mentioned this, the range of titles, both academic down to more lay level, popular level, we were immediately impressed. We use in our doctoral program, we use European publishers, and those publishers were there. The title range was just incredible. So that immediately sold us. Then the features that are there, particularly the read to speak, is amazing. Our students love it because they can multitask while they listen or read or hear the books spoken, and creating their own bookshelf. And then also multiple languages. Those are increasing more and more, and that was another big selling factor because we have students around the world. And if they can get that book in their own language, that's huge. Then also Perlego is an incredible company to work with. So we have been so impressed with the customer service. And one way that translates down to the practical, we had a certain publisher that we used their books for some of our courses. They were required reading. So we just emailed our Perlego rep and said, could you work with this publisher? And we were able to connect them thanks to Perlego. And now we have those publishers' books in Perlego that our students can use. So just the give and take, the customer service, the company is great to work with.
Thank you so much for that. I'm gonna have to pass it on to our customer success team. Yeah, I think that's a really good kind of overview of the headspace, kind of what problems you were trying to solve, and I guess how Pelego was able to help. I guess maybe the next question I'm eager to ask, and I'll just share my screen again so everyone's on the same page of what I'm asking, is I want to learn a little bit more about your experience implementing something like Pelego, because transformation, digital transformation, let's call it the opportunity cost. Yeah, we know it can sometimes be high. So how did you basically bake in the implementation of Pelego? And how did you ensure buy-in from your faculty members, your staff? It could be the library, it could be IT, whoever it might be. Jeremy, from your perspective, how did you make rollout a success at Princeton?
So I'll confirm what Laura was saying about the good customer service. Some of our challenges with providing something like 1 million ebooks to our users was that we had to make sure they were easy to connect to and that they were easy to discover. So some of the things Perlego worked with us on were implementing single sign-on, which is our preferred model. So once we were able to do that, it really helped. And then also being able to bring these million titles into our discovery service into some. So that's another thing that's been really helpful as far as raising discovery and awareness of these resources. Now, as far as how we actually implement our users getting licenses, we've found great success in orientation. So I started an orientation checklist. So whenever I'm speaking to the students or speaking to new faculty, I tell them like, these are the things you have to do today. So I try to keep it very brief. So some things are like, get a university library card, get a Princeton Public Library card, sign up for Perlego, sign up for New York Times. Like those are the 3 things I told them to do. So that really ensures that our licenses are heavily used. So I would say the measure of our success is that we're constantly bumping up against the top of our licenses because everyone is doing this.
Excellent. That's really helpful context. Thanks, Jeremy. And Laura, from your perspective again, how did you bake in that implementation and rollout piece?
Yeah, so similar to Jeremy, because Perlego works seamlessly with Primo, our discovery layer, it's huge. And we also use single sign-on, so it just makes it so easy for our faculty and students to access and use the books. And then also in my research courses and in welcoming new students, I include that. So yeah, there was no problem with buy-in. Once we started showing our faculty and students, this is what's available, instantly we had them behind us and they wanted us to get it. We also, this might be helpful, we have a goal of 80% of every title on course syllabi needs to be online. So we want to strive to reach that, and Perlego immediately helped us to reach that goal.
Excellent. That's really, really helpful. And I would say, was there any challenges or pushback when it came to implementing Pelego, maybe from students or from faculty? I guess, as a question to both of you. Eager to hear if there's any hurdles along the way.
So I think some of those initial hurdles for us were the single sign-on, making sure that was going well. And there's so many ebooks that making sure that there was perfect sync between what was actually available and what was discoverable in our discovery service. I would say one of our challenges tends to be with our more traditional faculty, and that tends to be with the format. It's an EPUB version, so sometimes page numbers can be a little tricky to find. I don't think that that's a great hurdle, but I will say that some of our traditional faculty are just so print bound that if it doesn't directly mirror an experience, they have a little bit of trouble with it. So I will say our greatest buy-in, those who love it most tend to be the students. And as for those accessibility features that Laura was talking about, they get the app, they download the ebook, they put on their headphones and they listen to it read aloud to them. They highlight things in there, they share things with each other. They can cite directly from their Lego. So I would say that the students tend to really love it. Faculty get frustrated if they can't find a page number. But I would say that's something else Paralego has been working with us on, is trying to make the page numbers appear more frequent and make them easier to cite.
Nice, that's really helpful. Thank you, Jeremy. Anything from your side, Laura?
No, I totally agree. There was very little pushback, if any, really. And Jeremy brought up a good point that, yeah, the EPUB lack of a page number is the most critique I get from students. But we've even noticed some of the EPUBs lately are having the page numbers, so I think some of that's getting remedied, which is great. And that's a very minor point if that's the only critique you get.
That's good to hear. Yeah, our engineering team is always making changes to the platform to increase that the basically the most in-demand features, which were page numbers for many years. Ebooks, not always the best at supporting page numbers. Many PDFs, they're just like a photo. But yeah, we've made a lot of strides there when it comes to page numbers on books. So I'm really glad to hear that feedback. Well, that's really helpful. And now I wanted to maybe just zoom out again and run through some of the, I'd say, the statistics from our relationship since we've been working with both of you guys and had the pleasure of being in front of your students. I want to look at impact and spend a little bit of time going through the statistics here because there's some really interesting data that I wanted to look at. So I'll start with Puritan Reformed. So we've been working with you guys for a little bit over a year, am I right in saying, Laura? And we've had over 300 signups in that time. So we're seeing that students who've even been joining the seminary midway through our relationship with Puritan have been able to integrate into the experience of using Palego, and they are reading a ton. So we're looking at the average of 39 books read in full per student directly on Palego, which I don't know. During I did history. I probably read about 30 books across my entire degree, let alone in 1 year. So hats off to you guys. But I didn't have Palego, so that's good to see. But one statistic that I always love to look at is the value of the books read by students. So this is basically the cost of all of the books added up that students at Puritan Reformed Theological Seminary have read across all the subject areas. And we're nearly hitting $300,000 in terms of value of books they've read. So think about it this way, those could be books that the students might have had to buy for themselves or that the library would have had to acquire with no guarantee that they'd actually get read. Whereas here, by the nature of books being instantly accessible on Palego, there's no sort of waiting to see what the impact is. You can just in real time see the statistics of which books are most in demand, which core readings have been read and which ones have been skipped. And you can even break it down by subject area. So within theology and religion, they're not just reading in a single subtopic, they're actually reading quite widely across the curriculum. So everything from ministry through to history, biblical studies, criticism, and so on, and commentaries. It's not a single chunk of one subtopic they're reading. They're reading widely and reading deeply into the subject area, which you would hope is what every student should be doing. But when those barriers are there, it's not always the case. And again, as you mentioned, Laura, I think the statistics really kind of bring to life what you were saying as well around students listening to their books. Over 6,000 times they've been listening to books, press play, put their headphones on and have biblical commentaries read to them They could be washing the dishes or walking the dog while listening to their book. They've been highlighting like crazy and making notes within the book, which otherwise Laura's team would probably be going through physical copies and looking at a ton of defaced titles. No longer the case with ebooks that you can actually highlight within the platform. And last but not least, over 3,000 hours spent reading, which I'm not sure how that adds up in terms of days and weeks and years, but yeah, it's more time in the day than I've been able to devote to reading. I'll tell you that. But yeah, I mean, any thoughts on the statistics, Laura, before I jump on, or anything that's jumping out at you?
No, it's just very validating. That's great.
Nice. I'm glad to think so. Then for Jeremy and his team and his students, so we've been working with Jeremy's seminary for a couple of years or almost 3 years now. So we've seen even higher numbers, around 769 total signups. So again, over the years, some students leaving, some joining, but Pelego is a constant that's been embedded into teaching and learning. You can see here by that number being pretty high. And then in terms of the total books read, a staggering 8,000 with a value of over $630,000. Again, eye-wateringly high numbers. So your students are reading a ton. They're also reading other subject areas really heavily, Jeremy. So they're looking at business titles as well, computer science, even social sciences, education. So they're reading widely in secondary subject areas as well as their core, I imagine, theological set texts. Any thoughts on that from like a collection perspective, Jeremy?
I will say that that was one of the attractive features is that we have a nice theological library. We have core theology texts in print and online, but our faculty, our students are interested in so many interdisciplinary topics. They could go to the university, check out those resources, but having something like Paralego where they don't have to do that anymore, they can just find the resources they need on one platform is really
Excellent. Yeah, that self-serve element, the knowledge being there at their fingertips, and we can be surprised by what they read, which is great to see. And then, yeah, in terms of how they're reading the books, again, similarly staggeringly high read aloud feature usages. We brought that feature in about a year and a half ago, and over 7,800 books have been listened to, tons of highlighting. Puritan's catching up with you guys, so the students better get reading. 3,455 from Princeton. But is this kind of chiming through? Are you hearing students asking questions about read aloud capability and features within the book?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think accessibility really matters for us, trying to make sure that we have different ways to meet the needs of our students. So a student came in and asked, do we have audiobooks? And I said, no, but we have Lego. So it was a way to allow that student to hear or to multitask as needed. They're taking a long drive or something. But I'll say maybe something that sets us apart is that Lego is just part of our ecosystem for us. So the fact that those numbers are that high, one of the things that we offer, I think, just shows how incredible Paralego has worked for us, because this is competing with lots of things. So that many books read for that many hours, I think is impressive.
Excellent. That's really helpful. Thank you, Jeremy. Well, I'd love to close this section out with maybe just what this is all about, which is a student's perspective. This isn't a real photo of Alejandro, who's a student at Puritan Reformed, but we did get a wonderful quote from Alejandro, who said that Pelego has truly become an instrumental part of my daily routine. I love that my library syncs seamlessly across all devices. This alone makes reading, studying, and researching far more convenient. And that feedback is why I come to work every day. We genuinely care about what students think about us. We've built the platform with students in mind. So hopefully this gives a sense of why we're all here. We care about that experience for the student at the end of the day. How can we embed accessibility into their daily experience of study and even into their daily routine that they can take home with them beyond being in the physical location of their seminary. But yeah, I think that about does it for my pre-prepared my piece. So I'd love to open up the floor to questions from anyone in the room. about what we've covered today, about Laura and Jeremy's experience of using Palego, or just about Palego more generally, or just about digital education. Love to open up the floor, and if people could post questions in the chat, and I'll make an effort to read them out, so that we're all able to hear what everyone's saying. I mean, I'm happy to get the ball rolling while some people think of any questions they might have. But I would say I'm interested to hear from the perspective of Jeremy and Laura. Feel free to jump in at any point. How has AI been front of mind in that kind of digital experience piece? Has there been any kind of hard policy from your institution around AI when it comes to digital education? Eager to hear from you guys, just very briefly, because it's front of mind for so many schools these days.
I think it's something that everybody's talking about, but I think everyone is planning and thinking about how to do it, but so far policies are light. It's left up usually to individual professors. I would say generally there's a conservative approach. There's a, I would say among most of our faculty, some fear of generative AI and the way that that might kind of circumvent student learning or short circuit the learning process or do the heavy lifting for those students. I think some of our other faculty are trying to figure out ways that AI can be a companion and a help make some of the work easier, as long as it doesn't kind of replace the hard work of education. So I would say that policies are light, but everybody is engaged with AI in some form or another. Every time they search, every time they use an electronic resource, every time they're online, they're encountering AI in some format. Every time they're typing in their email, Grammarly is trying to get them to spell things correctly or predict what text they're going to use. So it's everywhere for us.
Mm. Yeah, that's really helpful. And Laura, what about your perspective from Puritan?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. We have an institutional policy and our leadership is cautious but optimistic. So we're just trying to stay ahead of the game.
Nice. I think that's all you can do. That's great to hear. Excellent. Well, we've had a few questions drop into the chat now. So I'll start from the top. We've got Scott asking, is there a way to search the collection to compare availability to texts required by our instructors? Yes, indeed. So you're able to search within the platform itself for individual titles, publishers, authors, subject areas. Often the best way, if it's a massive list, you can send it to me and I can do it for you, because I can run it through our system just to see how many of the books that you need that are required by your instructors that we've got on the platform. But the ability to just dive into the collection and just see what's on there is quite fun, to just browse. And sometimes you come across new titles each time you search. But yeah, you're able to cross-reference by going through me. We've had another question from Fabio. Does Palego have books in other languages, Spanish and Korean? Spanish is a big yes. We have, I think it's about 250,000 titles in Spanish, including quite a few thousand, I think like 5,000 or 6,000 theological texts in Spanish. Korean, unfortunately, we don't cover Korean. We do proactively think about new languages. Currently, we have content in English, Spanish, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, and Swedish. So we've got quite a few bases covered. There's a lot of other languages out there that maybe one day will make their way to the platform. But thank you for asking at least. But yeah, we are trying to add more in the future. That's helpful to ask about. And then we've got Hannah asking, how do you pay for subscriptions? Do you pass the cost on to students? Are you using library budget? And have your library acquisition practices changed? Maybe Jeremy or Laura, I'll open up the floor to you to answer that one.
So I would say so far we've taken the cost into the library's budget. We've been able to cover it just fine. But I would say that with other types of groups like learners or scholars who are here for a short amount of time and leaving, or things like alumni, the idea that they could pay for it themselves or they could incorporate that into some kind of continuing education cost, I think is really attractive. If for some reason it didn't fit within the library's budget, I think putting like a little add-on into tuition would make a lot of sense because it provides so much additional.
If I could just tag on to that, we also cover it with the library budget. Some of it is covered by another department in the seminary, and we have not passed the cost on to our students. We cover it completely. Although that's something we might do, but we'd like not to, if we didn't have to. It's definitely affected the library acquisition in that, right? We don't need to buy as many physical books if we can get the ebook on for Lego. So it's a plus there as well.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I can speak to some partners we work with who have passed the cost on to their students, safe in the knowledge that the student is getting a pretty good deal off the back of it. So if it's a nominal fee or even the full cost, because the school is able to benefit from a much lower cost than the student would otherwise pay if they came to Pelego directly, or obviously the cost of buying those books separately. Some schools are happy to subsidize through student fees. Obviously, it requires some communication, some advance notice in some cases. But yeah, there's lots of different ways. So it's not yeah, we're not prescriptive over how schools provide and fund Pelego. So that's really helpful. Thanks, guys. We've got a question from Ellie. Yeah, actually, that's covering the last question. So individual scholarships is an interesting one. I think that's some schools we work with have fundraised or used scholarships to pay for Pelego licenses. That's been really helpful for some schools. Another question was around, does Pelego offer only ebooks, not articles and journals? I'm glad you've asked. We just focus on ebooks. So we don't have articles, journals, dissertations on the platform because we're focusing on textbooks, monographs, ebooks in general. You've, in terms of whether those will come in the future, they're not currently in our plans because our aim is to really focus on as many ebooks as possible because there's quite a lot out there, as I'm sure you can imagine. And there's many schools we work with, they're providing journals through other platforms. So again, it's that piece of Pelego existing in a kind of ecosystem alongside other databases for journals, for articles, whatever it might be, and doing so quite happily. We don't cover every single publisher in the world. We've had someone ask about Cengage and Pearson. Different countries have different availability. We don't have every single book under the sun. I wish we did, but some publishers we don't have, such as Pearson. But usually we're able to work with our partner institutions to suggest alternatives based on books that are actually on Pelego. So then at scale, they can substitute a book that in some cases has actually gone down a lot better with faculty and with students, especially because you know that you can instantly scale that access to every student at the seminary, but you're giving Pelego to. So hopefully that answers that question. And then there's another question in the chat around statistics for reports. I'll pass this over to Jeremy and Laura in a second, but I wanted to mention that we have built-in analytics into the platform itself. So within your admin account, you can track things like which titles have been read, which subjects, which students have read which books, and so on. And we can export that data into the counter report compliant format. But maybe from Laura and Jeremy's perspective, have you guys dived into the statistics within the platform, or is there someone else in your team that does that to monitor the statistics on usage?
I haven't yet done that, Ben. Yeah.
No worries.
Say, we dig in every once in a while just for curiosity's sake, but I'll say that counter reports and usage statistics are something that we're continuing to work on and trying to get at number.
Excellent. That's really helpful to know. Another question was around students downloading, printing out materials from ebooks to read and take notes. Does the highlighting feature cover these needs? So, I mean, maybe from Jeremy and Laura's perspective, do you have students asking to download and print out books from Pelego? Because we've built, obviously, note-taking into the platform, the ability to save your notes in the book level. Is that a feature that students are asking for? Eager to hear from your perspective.
So interestingly enough, I got that from another librarian, but I haven't gotten that from any of our students. The highlighting feature within the ebook, they love it. Yeah, and I think that covers it.
I think there was a dream at one time that the digital renaissance would mean no more printing things out continuously. but I'll say that our students, and I think it's the discipline thing, or maybe the types of students we have, they love having prints. So they will, print off articles, print off chapters of books so that they can mark them up and highlight them. I think they also like to be in a classroom where they don't have to be on their computer, they can hold something in their hands. So I'll say they do take advantage of that highlighting, but if I do not want to stop you all from making printing available. So if we could download and print, that would be very welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that when it comes to downloading, our mobile app supports downloads for offline reading. So students can download and cache the book into their mobile app so they can read offline. We don't support full, downloads into the into your web browser, so you can't download a book. The reason why is publishers' IP, and they don't want us to do that immediately. But hopefully, that highlighting piece and getting reading within the book rather than on a printout is a long-term trend, but hopefully it'll long-term arc of history will bend towards less printing for the tree's benefit as well. But we've had another question in the chat from Eric in New Orleans, who has asked about music resources. It's a great question and very timely because we just started working with Jubilee University, which is a Christian music university. We do have some. It's not a core, large topic, but we do have a few thousand titles in music, learning music, music theory, a lot of good titles from Routledge in that space. And we have a few different schools who are using those resources to cover their provision in music courses, especially for devotional activities as well, because I imagine that's a part of some programs too. We've got a question about how do you count these when it's time to report stats to ATS? Well, yeah, I guess this is a good question. Do Jeremy or Laura, have you had to do any reporting from library data to ATS? Obviously, very topical from within Palego.
That's not my area, so I've not had to deal with it. I do know they count somehow, but I'm not exactly sure how they're doing.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, we can leave that one to the court then. But yeah, hopefully with things like Counter, with the ability to report in real terms on student reading activity, hopefully it'll help with regards to your reporting. But yeah, eager to know if that's anything specific anyone needs. When it comes to the pricing model, I had a question from Jennifer. So we pay based on individual seats. So some schools will buy for their entire headcount, others will focus on full-time, others on distance learners, doctoral, masters. It's the number of seats that you'd be purchasing is what determines our pricing. It's a per student cost, basically, is the way to think about it. Hopefully that answers the question.
Can I jump in, Ben, on
Yeah,
that?
Jen.
So, Jen, we just noticed that it is by user, but we did not need to buy as many users as we actually have students for. You can revoke the license, or not the license, but you can revoke the user's account if you need to, and just change that based on how you see them using it. And even not every student will take advantage of Perlego either. So there's room to work with getting Perlego for less than the actual number of students you have.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. As I've mentioned a few times, not a one size fits all, and that also refers to who you give access to. You might have some students that are in not very reading intensive programs that maybe you want to prioritize other programs or different degree levels. We found that graduate and doctoral students read a ton on Palego, especially researchers as well. So they've often been where some seminaries and institutions have started. Others will focus on MDiv, Masters in Theology programs, whoever it might be. So it's not a one size fits all. We've got a statement from Spencer in the chat. There are study guides for things like MCA as your administrator. You're absolutely right. So as I mentioned, it's not just one subject area. It could be theological. We cover things like computer science certifications. We've had people from within tech companies buying Palego to upskill their engineers on things like Kubernetes and Python, whatever it might be. way beyond my headspace as a non-techie guy. But yeah, it is, yeah, it's covering many bases, as Jeremy mentioned as well. Even a seminary student is not just reading theological books. They might have a side gig of building websites. You never know. So Pelego being used for personal development is something we hear all the time. Could be professional, or could just be a passion. Could be pottery, wood carving, whatever it might be. There's probably a book on Pelego for them. But I think that's about taken us through all of the questions in the chat. Unless anyone else has any burning questions. Or anyone from ATS like Chelsea? Oh, we've got another question from Fabio. Ben, does the library limit students using the same resource at the same time? No, it does not. So the beauty of that is because it's an unlimited reading model, you could have all of your students who you've given Pelego access to reading the same book at the same time. So no, single license limits or 5 licenses per book that some databases provide. On Pelego, it's truly unlimited in terms of the number of students who could be reading the same book at the same time. So hopefully that's a big boost where, some limited license, ebook purchases that libraries have to make because of cost, they can be overcome. And you can really just supercharge your ability to provide books to students and have that concurrent usage. Was that a challenge that you've faced before, kind of Laura and Jeremy, with ebooks where you've had maybe limited license kind of ebook providers?
I'll say that's very common with aggregate databases. So things like EBSCO, ProQuest has always been one of the free users on those. So it's been nice with her like
We did have that because we were working with Atlas Theological ebook lending project, and yeah, they have just one user per book, and that's not real convenient.
Nice. Yeah, it comes down to that ability to put 1 million books in a student's pocket. You're not picking the other student's pocket when you open the same book as them. That's a nice way to think about it, I would say. Great. Well, I think that's taken us through the questions in the chat. Unless anyone's got any burning questions, I'll keep the floor open for a few seconds. But in terms of bringing Pelego to more seminaries, to more institutions, as you'll see here, my email is open. Hopefully there'll be a follow-up from ATS as well. But I'd love to chat. I'd love to learn more about what your institutions are doing with regards to digital transformation, how you're getting books in the hands of your students or into the phone and laptops of your students at the very least. And hopefully from what you've seen today and heard from Jeremy and Laura's experience, there could be something there. And I'd love to learn more and see how we can partner with you. So please do reach out. We can spend some time diving into the platform. I can walk you through how it all fits together. You can do some reading and really see in the truest possible terms what it could look like to scale Pelego to your students and to your faculty. But unless any other questions have dropped into the chat, that's probably about done us, right?
Awesome. Well, can you all join me in thanking Ben and Laura and Jeremy for being here with us? Thank you so much, Ben, for the information and for, again, helping us imagine forward the possibilities of digital transformation and the ways that Perlego is a part of that work for theological education at large. And of course, it's always important to hear actual users and how it's benefited. So thank you so much, Laura and Jeremy, for coming. And thank you all for being here. It's been great to hear the questions and be in conversation. So as you saw, Ben had his email up. Feel free to use that. We'll also send a follow-up and always look out for other opportunities for us to gather and to learn what it means to do this work well together. And so thank you all for being here, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you all.